How to avoid death in the pot. Lord have how to avoid death in the pot. And that's one that especially you ladies and sisters and so on and so forth need to understand. The way to get to your man's heart, literally to your man's heart, is what you cook. And I know we have some men chefs too. I don't want to come across being chauvinistic, but generally, and generally speaking, and I'm generally speaking now. Let me speak for myself. Miss Rome does all the cooking, okay? And Dr. Gavin knows that he's had some of that cooking. You know what I mean? So for you ladies to understand how to avoid death in the pot, it almost means how to keep your husband from dying from what you cook that's in the pot. I'm just keep it real. That's where it is. So in any event, we are very blessed and very fortunate today to have again Dr. Gavin. Dr. Gavin wears many hats here with CHP, along with, of course, Dr. Anthony Lewis, our cardiologist, and of course, Dr. Demetrius Morrison. Dr. Morrison, she heads up our nutrition program at this point. In any event, next slide, please. And those of you already know me, basically, I'm one of those interesting fellows, board certified emergency medicine. And so I have a chance to interact with all the different specialties, and specialists, because, ER doctors, we have to know something about everything, really, especially about the more serious things, because we have to deal with those on a moment-to-moment basis. So, yes, I am the founder of CHP, but I got to tell you, like I tell everybody else, I could not be where I am, neither could CHP, without the help of others, right? A good leader, I've always said this too, is not the smartest person in the room, but typically smart enough to understand it, not the smartest person in the room. So therefore, we get people that are smarter than we are to head up to different areas. So I'm really blessed and really, really, I feel so good about knowing that we have such a quality team. And we'll be adding some more to our team coming up for the third part, I guess, of this grant year. It starts July 1st and it goes through June 30th of next year, right? And we have some other things that are cooking as well. Anyways, I always have to give, certainly credit to the people that have made it possible for CHP to be in this space at this point in time. But as you know, we do other things too. But this is a very important space for us to be in. And that's through the Florida Department of Health, by way of the Florida Department of Minority Health, by way of closing of the GAP grant. So if anyone ever wants to look up our grant, it's called RFA 23004. That's RFA 23004. Our contract number, which is public knowledge, is out there too as CMO 93. So again, I want to thank the Florida Department of Health for giving us the opportunity. I want to thank the lady that's holding that thing that looks like a smart heart up. That's my wife, Christine. And boy, I got to tell you, she works day in and day out. How she does, I have no idea. But, it's getting to me a little bit because she's up sometimes 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And she gets up at around 7:30 in the morning as well. Now, Doc will get to bed at around 2, 3 in the morning, but I don't get up until around 9, 9:30 or so. Okay, so I'm keeping it real. So I really want to thank her for doing that. And of course, we have Dr., as I mentioned before, Dr. Gavin. Dr. Gavin is board certified in internal medicine and endocrinology. He just published a really beautiful article that's out in, I think it's American Diabetes Association, if I recall correctly. Is that correct, Dr. Gavin?
It's Diabetes Obesity Medicine.
Right.
Published by the American Diabetes Association.
Yes, and he was so kind to put our name associated with him for his contact information. So he put us on the map, both nationally and globally, actually. The next person is Dr. Anthony Lewis. I've known Dr. Lewis for some time now as a golf partner, initially, I believe, and then as my cardiologist. I happen to have 2 cardiologists. I believe it checked, but verified. Okay, but Dr. Lewis is definitely the man for me. He's board certified in internal medicine. He did his, I think, his residency training. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lewis, at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. He has been our chief cardiology consultant and will continue to be so. The next person we have is Dr. Morrison. Dr. Morrison has a doctorate in clinical. I think the DCN means clinical, a doctorate in clinical nutrition. All the other titles, I know what the registered dietitian mean and that kind of thing. But she has so many titles, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not gonna mess it all up. But she is CHP's nutrition consultant. All right, so now I'm going to throw it over to I think Dr. Gavin.
Yep.
Again, just tells us again about who we are and stuff. But Dr. Gavin, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Bell.
Sure.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. We consider these sessions really important for the long-term work that we're trying to do. And, you know, our focus is really on chronic disease, various chronic diseases, but all of the things that drive chronic disease, all of the things that affect chronic disease. And today's session is focused on how to avoid death in the pot. As you know, that's a metaphor for how do we keep ourselves from harming ourselves through our nutrition habits. So we are going to be focusing on insights into sensible and healthy nutrition. And there's some gurgling, scratching noises. Somebody put your mic on.
Okay. Yeah, but mic should be on at this point.
Yeah. So next slide. So these are our objectives. This is what we're going to try to cover today. We have a lot to cover, so we're going to try to move along as quickly as we can, but as clearly as we can. We're going to try to summarize the central role that's played by nutrition, by what we do at the table in chronic disease prevention and chronic disease management. We're going to provide some highlights on the effects of various kinds of nutrients on the key risk factors for cardiovascular disease, and you'll particularly hear a great deal about that in a very focused way from Dr. Lewis. We're going to define the elements of what is a healthy versus what we would call a regular food plan. Dr. Morrison is really going to do a deep dive on the contrast between those two. And then we're going to look at some resources and strategies for planning and executing healthy eating habits. And then we're going to try to give some strength to the concept that food is medicine for chronic diseases. Next. Now, you know, most of us know that food and eating habits are important for our health. We don't have to be healthcare workers. And the reason that we are aware of the fact that most of us are sensitive to the importance of food in our health is that we hear a lot of things said about eating. Things like, you are what you eat. Stop digging your grave with your teeth. He or she is eating himself or herself to death. Or some people look at a plate and say, boy, you need sideboards with that plate. Or on the lips for a minute, on the hips forever. And people will very often say around dessert time, oh, it's okay because I took all the calories out. And then, of course, those of us who are involved in chronic disease management, particularly like diabetes, will say with authority, you can eat your way through the effects of any medicine that any doctor prescribes for you. You can out-eat the effects of that medicine. Okay, next. Now, for most of the chronic diseases, healthy nutrition is the foundation. Hear me well. It's the foundation of any treatment plan that you're on, and the beneficial effects of the medicines that you are prescribed always assumes that the presence of a healthy diet is there already. This is a fundamental concept that's embodied by the FDA. Now, our two speakers today, Dr. Lewis will highlight why healthy nutrition plays such a central role in chronic disease causation and management. And Dr. Morrison will tie it together because she will really focus on how we can go about the process of implementing healthier eating into our daily routines. Next. So if we think about chronic disease, all of them, I'm illustrating here chronic kidney disease, one of the big ones, but it's true for all chronic diseases. especially those that occur in the setting of diabetes. And we've talked to you more and more and more times than I can count about how important diabetes is as a platform for the major chronic diseases. All of these are diseases that are multifactorial in the management that they require. Teamwork is necessary. Look at this pyramid. What's at the foundation of this pyramid? Lifestyle, exercise, nutrition is the centerpiece, and dropping bad habits like smoking cessation. This is true for all patients with chronic diseases, no matter what the chronic disease is. The next level above those lifestyle changes, of course, are things like the medications that you might be prescribed, whether you're talking about the general medications, and at the very top of the pyramid, antiplatelet therapies, for example, for chronic kidney disease. Next slide. Now, why do we need to watch what we eat? Why do we focus on it? Why are we always obsessing about it? Well, first and foremost, we know that we are constantly trying to avoid the problem of overweight or obesity, because we know that's a setting in which a lot of unpleasant things can happen. It is the foundation. Good nutrition is the foundation of any medical treatment plan. Okay, and that's along with exercise. Okay, and all drugs that are approved for the treatment of the disease like diabetes are expected to be used in conjunction with diet and exercise. Next. Now, when I say that, I'm going to speak directly from the FDA. Nearly every non-insulin medication for type 2 diabetes is approved as an adjunct. That means to be used in association with diet and exercise to improve glucose control. This phrase, if you looked at your prescriptions, you looked at the patient package inserts for any of your medications, this phrase is part of the standard FDA indication for type 2 diabetes drugs. The FDA has basically adopted the view of drugs as adjuncts to the real medicine in chronic disease management, and that is food. It doesn't matter what the class of drugs might be, okay? You see the sulfonylureas, things like Amaryl and Glucotrol or Glimepiride, things like the TZD, the thiazolidinedione drugs, that's Actos and Avandia. The DPP-4 inhibitors, you may know it as Januvia, Tradjenta, Onglyza. The GLP-1s, the Ozempics, the Rybelsus, the Mounjaro, and the SGLT2s, you see them on TV, Farxiga, Jardiance. It doesn't matter. The FDA has approved all of those drugs to be used with diet and exercise. In other words, it says, don't expect them to work if you don't include healthy nutrition and exercise. Okay, next. So, Dr. Lewis is going to focus his comments on why does healthy eating play such an important role in chronic disease development and progression? What are the influences on the key risk factors that drive cardiovascular disease? So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Anthony Lewis with this elegant opening slide.
It is very eloquent, actually, to say it.
Stop it, Dwight. Very nicely done, Dwight. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about one of the most important issues in all of chronic disease. That is what we eat. Now, one of the things we've learned, even as a child, whatever you do, don't go to somebody's house and start opening their refrigerator. Don't go in someone's pots and start looking in them. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do today, because I know that it is the foundation of all good health, what you're eating. Now, I want to go way back in time, and I hold it there for a minute. I want to go way back in time, and I want to deal with that exact thing, the diet. I want to go back to our great grandparents. Do you know Adam and Eve? What a couple they were. And did you not know that in their original diet, they had nuts, grains, vegetables, fruit. They had no meat. They were vegetarians. They had never seen an animal killed in their original diet. No animals died so that they could eat. So it would suggest that everything you need is actually contained in the natural foods that we eat, like nuts, grains, vegetables, fruit. And guess what? Adam lived to be 930 years old. All of you have heard about Methuselah. He lived to be 969 years old. Now, then there came the flood, and things got a little difficult because all vegetation basically almost died. And Noah said, listen, and their family said, listen, we're hungry. We want to eat some food, eat some meat. And at that point, that the scriptures tell us that man was given 70 years. So I'm going to suggest to you today that the diet is one of the most important things in your longevity. Next. And here it is, the good foods. Wonderful. Isn't that delicious? Oh, I'm getting hungry just looking at it. Next. Still, good choices, good outcomes with these particular foods that you see in the background. Salmon, chicken, good veggies, nuts, grains. Next. Now let's look at what becomes a little challenging. Sweets. Does anyone know how hot dogs are made? Almost nobody knows what's in a hot dog. And I'm not, again, I'm in your kitchen, I'm in your refrigerator now, but we're going to keep moving. Next. A plate of meat. In fact, today's diet all contains healthy portions of meat. Now, I myself am not a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian, but I'm no longer that. So I'm preaching to myself as well, Elder Philpart. So I'm just telling you that what we're going to talk about today is something that is very important in your diet. Next. All of you know this guy. And,
Like
and this guy, they don't throw anything away. But let me go back again to some historical background to our culture and to the culture of African Americans. Back in the day, the owner of the big plantation, they threw away certain parts of this fellow because they didn't think he was food. They threw away the belly, the feet, the tail.
Dr. Lewis, the quality of your sound has changed.
Yeah, it's changed, yeah.
Let's see, what happened?
It's better now. Try it again.
Okay. Are we okay?
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay, good. So what I was saying to you, in the historical years of our culture, the slave owners, they owned these plantations and they threw away most of this guy. They threw away his feet, his tails, his brain, his nose, ears. And guess who got those?
Slaves.
Yes, we got it. And hence we came up with what's called soul food diet and things that were supposedly, good for us. Now, soul food is great, but a pot of collard greens are wonderful. I don't think you can beat that. But when they're soaking in a heavy slew of fatback and hog maw,
Like it is.
it becomes dangerous. All of us know where lard comes from. Lard comes from this fella right here. It is because of the fat contained in this fella is that we just fill our bodies with these fats and they are laid down as plaque. And plaque becomes a big burden in our lives. And that's what leads to chronic disease, brain, kidneys, heart disease. Next. Now let's talk about what the problems are. HDL versus LDL triglycerides. The facts on lipids, okay? Next. Understanding blood lipids and cardiovascular risk. The key points. Lipids are fats transported in the blood via lipoproteins. The three major markers are HDL, high density lipoprotein. So I want you to remember The H as heavenly, okay, because that's your high level of what you're trying to obtain. And LDL is your low level, and that's the opposite of heaven, so you know where that is. The higher you can get on the pole, the better you are. The lower you get, the worse you are. And then there's triglycerides. The central role in atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, of course, are these three factors. Lipid interpretation guides prevention and treatment. What are they? Next. HDL. This is what I want you to take away from this talk today in the next few minutes as I talk to you. Is HDL removes cholesterol from the arteries. So that's a good guy. It takes cholesterol away and takes it back to the liver and deposits it back in there, and it's metabolized and kicked out of the body. LDL delivers cholesterol to the tissue, so that's the one that you want to call bad cholesterol. Triglycerides is a marker of metabolic dysfunction. It stores energy, excess energy, fats, sugars, etc., alcohol, that kind of thing. Next. The key factors. LDL carries cholesterol into the arteries, promotes plaque formation. This is the bad part because LDL takes it and deposits these fats and cholesterols on the walls of the arteries and causes decreased blood flow. The strongest lipid predictor of coronary artery disease is LDL. It's the major treatment target in cardiology. Coronary artery disease, heart attacks, strokes, peripheral arterial disease, as you one sees in diabetes, etc., etc. The general population should have a triglyceride of less than 100, and in high-risk patients less than 70, and in very high-risk patients less than 55. So the lower you can get the LDL, the more your health improves in terms of risk for coronary disease. HDL reverses cholesterol transport. It carries cholesterol back to the liver, anti-inflammatory, antitoxin properties, antioxidant properties. The clinical HDL is generally associated with lower risk, cardiovascular risk. However, they've discovered in the laboratory that raising it pharmacologically has not shown any particular reduction in cardiovascular events. Desirable levels for men greater than 40, women greater than 50. Typically now, HDL, we'd like to see it like 60. HDL is no longer considered primary treatment target. Go ahead. Triglycerides, stored form of fat. They're derived from excess calories, sugars, and alcohol. Higher diabetes, obesity, insulin resistance, alcohol use, high carbohydrate diets, associated with metabolic syndrome. The metabolic syndrome typically involves hypertension, high cholesterol levels, low HDLs, and of course you're going to see very higher levels of LDL and belly fat. That's typically what we call metabolic syndrome, which puts you at increased risk. It contributes to atherosclerotic heart disease. Severe elevations, we notice, has an increased risk of pancreatitis, which is a real problem that we want to keep those triglyceride levels really below 150. Next. So here's sort of a slide that kind of covers everything in a nutshell. HDL, good cholesterol. Cholesterol removal. It's protective of the arteries. There's no primary treatment plan for that. The main therapy is lifestyle. LDL, it's the bad cholesterol. Deals with cholesterol delivered to the arteries. Plaque forming. Primary target of treatment today is LDL. Statins and non-statins. Triglycerides. Blood fat. Energy storage. indirectly harmful, secondary target, and the main thing is lifestyle, about what you're putting in the pot. Next. All right. How lipids damage blood vessels. LDL enters the arterial wall. LDL becomes oxidized. Inflammation develops. Foam cells and plaque forms. Plaque ruptures, and there's a heart attack, there's a stroke. The role of HDL is to remove cholesterol from the plaque. The role of triglycerides associated with the inflammatory and small, dense lipoproteins particles, LDL particles. Next. The treatment strategies. Statins, ezetimibe, PCSK9 inhibitors, fibrates, omega-3 fatty acids. That's how the medications, the primary effect of statins is to lower LDL, reduce cholesterol absorption. Profound LDL lowering is what we see in our PCSK9 inhibitors. And lower triglycerides in terms of the fibrates, they're lower triglycerides, and the lower triglycerides also seen in omega-3 fatty acids. So these are the major treatment plans. I'm certain a lot of you are on one or two of these medications in an effort to lower cholesterol, lower your LDL, etc. Next. Bottom line, LDL is the primary causal lipid in atherosclerosis. HDL is protective, but not a major treatment target. Triglycerides reflect metabolic health and residual risk. Lipid management reduces heart attacks and stroke risk. Early prevention is essential. One of the things that I did when I was in my training program, the last talk that I did at the university, at the clinic, was on just this topic. How do we prevent early cardiovascular death? I presented a patient who had had bypass surgery. He's coming for his second bypass surgery. What do you do? The most important thing that you can do is change his diet. And diet is a part of lifestyle. If you don't affect his diet, the effects that you have on his overall health will be minimal at best. Next. In conclusion, lower LDL for longer duration leads to a lower cardiovascular risk. Heart health depends on our choices. This fella is undefeated. You should find a way from your diet.
So before we go on to our principle, how to avoid death in the pot, to get insights into sensible and healthy nutrition from Dr. Morrison. Dr. Lewis, I just want to touch on a couple of points that you raised because I think they're important for our audience. One is you talked about the importance of LDL at a level of less than 70 milligrams per deciliter in high-risk people. And our audience members need to know that we've been talking to you all over these last several seminars about who those high-risk people are. So remember, those are people with known heart disease. Those are people with long-term, long-standing diabetes, poorly controlled diabetes, people with high blood pressure, people with kidney disease. Those people are especially the people that we're talking about who need those levels that you're talking about. Would you comment on that? Unmute.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to talk about when I talked about the program that I did at the university there, is that after you've given a patient bypass surgery, if you don't change their diet, then you've really not helped that patient. What Dr. Gavin is getting to is that unless you make a real big change in the eating habits of that patient. That's why lowering cholesterol in high risk patients to 70 and very high risk to 55 is key because this adds a protective value to their future events as you go forward. To just keep offering surgery is not the answer. To just say, okay, you lose, some vessels to the heart, let's do bypass. Let's do another bypass. Well, you can only do so many bypasses. And before long, the patient is destroyed. Here's how you can determine when you know your cholesterol level is getting much too high. When you cook and you're eating more foods that have fat, and that when I say fat, you'll know it because it changes from a liquid to a solid depending on temperature. For instance, all of you cooked a hamburger. You don't need oil to cook a hamburger because it has its own oil. That is cholesterol. Now, the only difference between cow's fat and, say, pig's fat is that it becomes a different value based on temperature at a lower level. So the lard becomes solid at a much lower level, a higher level than cow's fat. So at 98.6 is the body's temperature, pretty much cow's fat will keep rocking and rolling, whereas pig's fat may in fact turn into a solid. Anything that changes from a liquid to a solid based on temperature should be avoided in general.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. And the final thing I would point out is that we really want you as members of our audience, as members of our team of people who are interested and concerned about chronic disease, get into the habit of following the numbers. Dr. Lewis has pointed out numbers that are important, what your levels ought to be, when those numbers are creeping into the red zone, as opposed to when those numbers, the levels of LDL, the levels of triglyceride, the levels of HDL. You hear us talking all the time about what your levels of blood sugar ought to be, but numbers are important. Get into the habit of knowing, embracing, and pursuing those healthier numbers. So our finale on this topic today is going to be presented by our registered dietitian, our nutritionist, Dr. Demetrius Morrison, who's going to talk about how we do this. Dr. Morrison, it's all yours.
Hey, can I make one comment, please, first?
Dr.
Yeah, one comment first. Exercise, it was not mentioned. Exercise has been known to increase rather your HDL, high dyslipidemia. So whatever you're going to be doing in terms of dieting, very important, no question about that. But exercise is extremely important. How much exercise are you do? Do something. Just keep moving. That's very important. Next thing is that as Dr. Morrison begins her presentation, I'm sure it's going to be excellent too, by the way. I want to make sure that everybody knows that you don't have to write down everything. In fact, you don't have to write down anything. It's given to you in a recorded session. So once this seminar is over, the webinar is over, then you'll be able to go online. Amen. You'll be able to go online. You'll be able to watch this over again. If you want to put it on hold and take a picture of that, so be it. But I want you all to remember now, it's so important for us to get everyone to go ahead and fill out the post-test as well as the evaluation of this course. This is critically important to keep us moving in the right direction on an upward bound type of slope. Dr. Morrison, back to you, love. Appreciate you.
Okay, Dr. Morrison, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again, Dr. Gavin, Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Lewis, and our attendees. Good morning. My component would be to focus on key ideas on how we can do this and bring this all back full circle. Next slide, please. Some of the learning objectives of this section would be to prioritize a healthy diet, like it was previously mentioned, healthier diet versus a regular diet. And basically, what that means is economies of scale. If you can afford a lower grocery budget, 100, we'll work with it. If your budget is 300, we'll work with that as well. We'll learn strategies to reduce food costs, how to identify healthy carbohydrate sources. Uh, Dr. Lewis eloquently spoke about the diet in the biblical days. And we do have people with degrees of preferences. Some are vegans, vegetarians, pescatarians, and some eat meat. It's fine. We will learn how to identify fiber rich foods, low carbohydrate diets, not too low. We don't want you to go and produce ketones or be ketotic, but we want to explore that as well for glucose management. Learn sodium and fat intake requirements for healthy nutrition. Next slide, please. So when we look at economies of scale and economy and food preparation, we all know food cost is going up, gas is going up. We all know that that is definitely a concern, cost efficiency. And we always want to mention preparing meals at home is always going to be more affordable than purchasing ready-to-eat meals, as households save on labor and overhead costs. If you can't afford, there are some healthier options on the market, but we always understand that preparing meals at home, you have greater control. Also, preparing meals at home is more economical and it's healthier than restaurant meals. We really can't control what the restaurants order for their food budget, and we can't control what their cooks put in the meals. We can't, even if the labels say what it says, we really not there to eyeball it. The regular budget community tends to prioritize costs over nutritional values, often selecting cheaper ingredients like meat and processed foods, which increases risk for health risk, metabolic disorders, and cardiovascular disease versus the healthier budget community tends to be more costly, and the perception is eating healthy is expensive. There is a higher cost, but in the long run, you pay cheaper because your health is healthier. It can be controlled with selected food items on rotation and food items that are in season. They tend to be more cost effective than foods that are not in season. But the overall goal is to discover strategies to reduce food costs and maintain healthy diets. Next slide, please. So, based on research, it has been reported that consuming fewer heavier meals like breakfast, lunch, and dinner with high levels of carbohydrate and fat may result in metabolic and intestinal overload and micronutrient deficiency. So basically, for example, I always kind of use the 4 for $4 at Wendy's, where you can get a burger, a fried nuggets, and a soda, and that's $4. And if you have limited budget or you have a restricted amount of money to spend, that may be your lunch and or dinner, but that particular item that's offered is deficient in the essential micronutrients that you may need. It'll be probably higher in carbohydrate because you have the soda that has the high fructose corn syrup and the refined sugar. You have the French fries that are refined. You have the burger that the bread is made with is refined. So, and the nuggets that is fried in commercial grade oil. And of course, the meat is processed and the coating of the chicken nuggets is a processed item. It's going to be a higher carbohydrate meal. It's gonna be, like I said, more metabolic intense. It's gonna be more work for your pancreas to put that food to work, and it's not going to be beneficial in the long run. But most regular budget consuming people tend to purchase that way. I'm just going to do something really quickly. It's not a traditional, say for example, turkey burger if you would have prepared it at home and oven baked fries with the skin on the potato. It's still of a burger and fry concept, and maybe you would have done maybe some alkaline water as opposed to soda, but it's not the same because the product, the healthier product, is going to give you probably less calories, more fiber, which is going to help that HDL, and it's going to be less refined in sodium, which is going to help that blood pressure. So we really want to tie in budget with cooking at home, and we want to be mindful that we do have two groups, healthy and regular, but they can both be taught how to purchase within their economy of scale. The regular budget community relies on a Western or starchy diet pattern, characterized by relatively high portions of grains and meats and relatively low portions of vegetables and fruits. And so we see the plate composition will be meat and potatoes, meat and rice, but the veggies are not there. You can identify a handful of vegetables. I like to identify Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, collards. That's my go-to dark green leafy. We rotate those four. Whether you're on a regular budget or a healthier budget, you can identify your veggies, and then you won't fall into that group that's eliminating vegetables. Next slide, please. So in looking at this healthy regular budget, you will see the difference. The itemized items you see in red are what the group frequently prefers. And you will see in the regular diet that the identified protein sources is meat, vegetables, egg, beans. But in the healthier diet, you'll see it's identified eggs more so than vegetables, beans more so than eggs. And here, what we're trying to identify out of all the items are the colored ones to say, if the healthier group chooses beans as a protein source and the regular group chooses eggs as a protein source, that's fine. We just want to make sure if you do eggs, you boil them. And if you do consume eggs, you may do one yolk and maybe the others kick the yolk out and just do the white. So it's all about composition too. We can work with the egg and we can work with the beans. And we know that, beans is a great source of fiber and protein. But you know what? That's now considered a healthy food item. Back in the day, people looked at food, beans as, a poor man's product. But now you can see in the healthy food budget group, beans are highlighted. Next slide, please. So in this category here, it shows basically the healthy group, their preferred choices would be smoothies, veggies, beans, probably whole grain pasta. And then it kind of leans over to the regular budget, preferring your noodles, your dairy, sandwiches, bread. Their selection is a little different. But like I said, different is not deficient. If you want to put your fruits in a blender with a little bit of vegetables and make a smoothie, fine. But we just want both sides to be equal. So if the healthy group wants a smoothie, then we want to promote the same mindset with the regular budget and say, hey, then if you can't afford all those items in your blender, choose two items. Choose a fruit, choose berries, they're high antioxidants, and choose a veggies, maybe choose kale. And you can have the blueberries at breakfast and say the kale at lunch. We want to make sure we're emphasizing both groups to making healthier choices, of course, to their preferences. But of course, we understand there are economies of scale, but we still don't want to use as an excuse not to be healthy. Next slide, please. So when you're looking at your carbohydrates, what are carbohydrates? That's our natural fuel. When you dine out, that's not their priority. Keep that in mind. However, when you're cooking at home, that is your priority. So we want you to be mindful when you're serving yourself beans. A serving of starch is half a cup of beans. So you're just not gonna open the bag of beans and pour it in a pot and just cook it and serve how you want. No, you're gonna be mindful of, okay, a serving of fruit is one piece of fruit. So if the fruit is really huge, you're going to cut that fruit in half. Typically in school settings, you see the milk is one carton of milk. It's a similar situation at home. When you pour some milk, it's one cup, but your cup can't be 16 ounces. It has to be 8 ounces. Um, as far as sweets and desserts are concerned, those portions are even limited even more. Next slide, please. In addition to identifying your carb sources, you want to plate your plate appropriately. We already read that the food group eliminates fruit and veggies. We don't want that. We want to include, as you see at the plate model and it's color coded, half of your plate needs to be non-starchy veggies. And what is that? It's indicated at the top. Corn is not a veggie. Potato is not a veggie. Those are starches. Non-starch veggies, cabbage, collards, green beans, spinach, cauliflower. Those are what we want to fill half the plate. Those are high in fiber, low in calories, high in micro and micronutrients that's going to get that HDL where it needs to be. Okay, the meat you may have it, but it's not half the plate. It's a third of the plate. The starch you may have it. It's not half the plate. It's a third of the plate. And if you choose later on to have a piece of fruit, that's fine. But the plate itself is cohesive enough. And not everyone drinks milk with their meals. But again, we've already gone over portion sizes. So you're not going to eat half the watermelon. You're going to do half a cup of melon. That's it. Next slide, please. So when you're looking at carb choices, and you look at what you should have versus what you're eating. And this first plan is 3 carb choices, 45 grams. And so we've given breakfast, simple breakfast, 2 eggs, a toast, and some jam. And maybe probably the jam is organic or sugar-free. It's not the jam that's made with the corn syrup. And that's sufficient for 3 servings of carb. I can send the email to you with the nutrition slides, Lynn. For lunch, again, we have here a total of 3 carbs. Now, keep in mind if you veer off to doing your fast foods, you're eating out with larger portions, this 45 could double, could triple, could quadruple. And your organs are going to really work hard to bring all this carb into to break down to the sugar and put in your cells. So keep that in mind. It's spaced out with 3 meals and snacks in a day. It's not heavy. It's not loaded with fat. So you're gonna look forward to a next meal in the next 4 or 5 hours. And again, it's not loaded with carbs. So you're sedentary or you're tired. You're having carb overload. So again, an apple with peanut butter. So you got your fiber, you got your protein, you got your healthy fat, and it's a quick snack. Is 1 carb. It didn't offend no organs. Dinner again, it's good. 6 o'clock. It wasn't late after 7. You had your brown rice, your baked chicken, and your non-starchy vegetables. And again, that's it. It makes you at 45 carbs. If you want to take a walk after dinner, that's fine. But we wanted to show 3 to 4 carbs each meal is good. It's good. You were most active in the early part of the day anyway. And when you taper down in the afternoon, your meal should be a little lighter. So you should have a carb source. You have here with the second option, a baked potato. Not the excessively huge Idaho, just a small or medium baked potato, and you have your salmon and your green beans. And that will suffice for dinner. It will hold you. And again, look at the snack, peanuts, that's a protein source. Popcorn, not the one that's laden with the grease, just very healthy popcorn. That's 1 carb. That's it. Next slide, please. What should I eat? Well, we're in the greatest, wonderful nation of all times. You can choose whatever you want. You have choice. But if you have choice, choose the right things. So we make a comparison. You know what? Artificial sweeteners, I do a little stevia. I do. That's something that's my preference, or agave. But again, whole grains, brown rice, grilled items, grilled, steamed, roasted, stir fry, low fat milk, low fat cheese, fresh veggies preferred over frozen, lean meats, lean fish, lean poultry, preferably without the skin, natural herbs to season your foods, olive oil, you could do avocado oil, you could do walnut oil. These are all healthier oils. Really don't want you leaning too much on the vegetable and the canola. Those are refined oils. You could do unsalted nuts, Brazil nuts, cashews, walnuts, peanuts, great source of protein, fresh fruit as a dessert as opposed to a traditional dessert. Again, these are options that we always want you to know. Why? Because they're high in vitamins and minerals. Again, they're fresh food. You get the fresh nutrients. We're really, like Dr. Lewis said, we're really trying to keep that HDL up and that LDL down. So again, you're going to be very careful not to lean on your traditional desserts, your refined products, your refined starches, your refined grains. You want to be very careful, like he mentioned about the fat sources. You may not directly use fat itself, but if you dine out, the chefs are going to put it on their grill. They're going to make the food shiny and tasty. So be mindful. If you can make a request, do you have olive oil? But depending on where you're going. If you can't, then be mindful. You've been eating really clean Monday through Saturday, and you could afford to do that one day. You're eating more frequently, heavily, healthier than not, then that's understandable. But if you're still trying to get there, then some of the foods you just may have to leave alone for a little while to get to your goal. And maybe your goal, a baby step goal, maybe I want my HDL next time around to increase by 5 points, or I want my LDL next time around to improve by 7 points. Whatever your goal you set with you and your physician, it's doable, provided that you go home and look at what's in the refrigerator. I can just tell you, sidebar, At one point in time, I would go into people's homes and gut out their cabinets and refrigerators. And then they'll say, hey, I want to eat healthy. And I'll say, okay, I'll do that first. And then we'll go to the grocery store second. And then it kind of stopped because they realize I don't want to part ways with certain things. I'm not there yet. And that's fine too. So we do understand small goals. Next slide, please. So the low carbohydrate diet is a carbohydrate intake of less than 130 grams. Okay. Please don't go lower than 130. Total grams should be individualized, like we saw with the carbs, 3 carbs meal plan or 4 carb meal plan. And this is per day. It could be adjusted to be 140, 150. You know, if you're on insulin regimen, if you're taking an oral hypoglycemic agent, depends on what's going on personally. You can obviously consume foods with fiber to make you feel a little fuller, take your time with digestion a little longer. You know, we definitely want you to do, beans, lentils, potatoes with the skin on it, get a good vegetable brush, clean your veggies really cleanly, and cook food that's going to take at least 30 minutes or less. Don't go in the kitchen making meals that's 3 and 4 hours because we just don't have that time in today's time. You put the baked potato in the oven, wrap it up with olive oil and put in the baked potato with the salmon in the oven. Maybe you steam your Brussels, and within 30 minutes your meal should be finished. It should be cooked, not overcooked, because we don't want to cook the food too long and the nutrients in the pot and you get nothing. And that could be a form of a death in the pot too, where you boil your broccoli till the water's green, or you boil your collards till the water's green. All that green should have went in your body. So we want to cook it, but don't overcook it. Yeah, it's very important. Um, what about meal replacements with fruit? Again, we still want you to get fresh food in your body because we want balanced nutrients intake. So we really, it's limited when you do the food replacement meal plans. But every now and again, maybe at one meal you decide to do a salmon, wild rice and Brussels combination with cabbage. Try to get those nutrients in because it's the fiber that binds. That's the fiber that binds in the cholesterol and is excreted through the bowel movement that helps those HDLs get better and the LDLs get better. You got to eat the fiber. 2 servings of fresh fruit, preferably. Um, I know we're a juice community. We like to put everything in the juicer, but sometimes just eat the fruit. 4 or 6 servings of vegetables that are non-starchy. And again, if you're going to steam in the microwave very quickly, you're going to cook it on the stove very quickly. We're not overcooking anything because what's the point of eating healthy if you're going to overcook it and cook all the nutrients out of it? You could do other food carb choices. Again, the portion size is very key. And rice, again, I want to emphasize the 1/3 cup. A lot of people don't even portion their plate with a 1/3 cup of rice. It's more like 2 cups. So instead of 2 cups, dial it back to 1/3 cup and increase a salad, maybe, with green beans. Get that fiber in. Get the fiber in. With low carbs, like you said, 2 or 3 carbs per meal, and that was demonstrated with the three carbs from the previous slide. Um, Again, we want to be mindful to consume our meals, be mindful of, sucrose containing foods. We don't want anything artificial. We really want it natural and organic and wholesome. Next slide, please. And as I said before, fiber is the way to go. Fresh vegetables, salads, whole grains, fresh fruits, eating 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So, for example, if you're doing, 1,500 calories, that's 22 grams. The goal is 30 daily. It's very challenging. Sometimes you may have to consume, high fiber cereal, all bran, raisin bran, something that will give you that 14 grams in one sitting. High fiber bread for your sandwich, maybe like a 5 gram of fiber per slice. So when you make a sandwich, it's 10 grams. And between those two, you're already at 24. So you may have to consume that if you're not a big eater. Again, raw vegetables, unpeeled raw fruits, unpeeled vegetables, beans, legumes, whole grains, whole grain pasta, high fiber rich cereal, greater than 5 grams of fiber per serving. We want to really intentionally put that in our grocery carts. We want to take our children with us to the grocery store and show them how to choose healthier items. We want to cook that quickly and take our kids in the kitchen and show them quickly. This is not going to take long. Let me show you how we take it from the grocery store to the grocery cart to the kitchen table. Next slide, please. Our protein intake is very important. 15 to 20% of total calories per day. The serving of your hand without fingers is 3 ounces. 3 ounces is the size of a deck of cards. So when you purchase protein sources, kind of look at how big the protein source is. Restricting to 0.8 to 1 gram per protein of body weight for adults who have early nephropathy, and also restricting 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight for adults with new onset later stages of neuropathy is what we suggest if you're at that point in time. Serving of protein will include an ounce of beef, and no beef is served in our grocery store as an ounce. Okay, you got ribeye that's 16 ounce. You have chicken breast that's 6-7 ounces. So you may have to butterfly the meat. Like I said, an egg is a serving of protein, a tablespoon of peanut butter is a serving of protein, a cup of milk is a serving of protein. These are all numbers you need to know because, again, even though it's lean, it still may have some type, of trans fat or saturated fat. So you don't want to think, oh, because it has no skin, I could eat as much as I want. No, that's not how it goes with protein. You still have to be mindful and limit your serving sizes. And adjustments should be made, obviously, for hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and renal failure. Next slide, please. So with sodium, in normotensive and hypertensive individuals, a reduced intake, for example, of 2,300 milligrams per day with a diet high in fresh fruit, vegetables, and low-fat dairy to lower blood pressure. Individuals with diabetes or who are at risk for cardiovascular disease should consume diets that are high in fresh fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and nuts to reduce the risk. Individuals with diabetes and symptomatic heart failure, dietary sodium intake should be less than 2,000 milligrams per day to reduce symptoms. Again, read your labels. A lot of products we purchase in the grocery store has labels on it. Now, if you purchase TV dinners, if you purchase some of those items on the shelves, the canned and frozen items, the sodium intake may exceed easily 2,000 milligrams when you eat these items. Basically, want to do fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. They have a negligible amount of sodium, but it doesn't compare to the processed items and doesn't compare to when you dine out. You really don't know if you were to go get some pizza, how much sodium is in that slice. You really don't know. So be mindful, if you do have symptomatic heart failure, be mindful of the sodium intake. That's very important. Choose low sodium foods. Like I said, read your label. If you're going to do fresh veggies, turn the bag over, look at the label. We don't want you to, get canned food if you can eat it fresh. Keep in mind of your seasonings. You could do, onion powder, not onion salt. You could do garlic powder, not garlic salt. You could do thyme. You could do scallion, cilantro, parsley. So many natural herbs that you can use. Avoid the salty sauces. I know they have a low sodium soy sauce now, but again, when you're dining out, even though it says labels, the restaurants still have to tell you what you're putting in your body. The restaurants don't have control over how much you eat of that item. So if you were to, like I said, go to get a number one from McDonald's, if you turn back around and get additional fries and don't say hold the salt, again, you're going to consume more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium. Next slide, please. So choose your plate. And choose my plate basically means be mindful of your calories. I mean, again, if you're eating cantaloupe, that's going to be a marginal amount of calories as opposed to your snack of your traditional, Doritos or something like that. When you're looking at your sodium, you're going to intentionally choose the cantaloupe. Even though you want the Doritos, you know what? I gotta monitor my sodium. I gotta do it, and I want the doctor to get me. Enjoy your food. Again, take your time. I always tell my husband, 20 chews. Chew your food. That's the first phase of digestion. Chew, chew, chew. You have a lot of teeth. Chew your food. Okay. Take your time. Don't rush your eating. Take your time. When you're done, you feel content, not full. Stop eating. You don't have to eat everything that you've served yourself. If you feel content, stop eating. Be mindful of the portion sizes. So if you go to 7-Eleven, there's a big gulp. How about you just get that Evian water bottle? You're going to feel just as refreshed. It's hot out, and minus the sodium and the sugar. Like I said, eat more vegetables, fresh grains, eat more healthier foods. They have more potassium, calcium, vitamin D, and fiber that you need, that those labs are dependent on to get better. You know, like I said, make half your plate to be veggies. So you got the fruit on the side, but choose your identified vegetables that you like and rotate them. You don't have to constantly feel like I don't have the money, eating healthy is expensive. If you only like Brussels sprouts and cabbage, rotate Brussels sprouts and cabbage. It's fine. Choose a low fat milk. Incorporate whole grains. Like I said, cut back on foods that are high in, like Dr. Lewis mentioned, those foods that are high in lard, saturated fat, trans fat. That those favorite comfort foods, cakes and cookies, ice creams and sodas. Again, when you've been good Monday through Saturday, you've been good 3 weeks out the month, treat yourself. But if you got goals in your labs and in your health overall to obtain, then you may just say to the woman and man in the mirror, not right now. I'm just going to stay with the fresh fruit as a dessert. That's what I'm doing. It's okay. Again, look at the sodium in the food items that you consume. You know what? Preferably, no sodium is ideal, but we know sodium is everything we have. So now we have to just be mindful of the foods we choose to eat and the portion and the frequency. Drink water, squeeze some lemon in it, maybe some lime. If you don't like the taste of water, it's hot out this summer. Drink your water. I know it's energy drinks out there. I know it's coffee out there, but please drink your water. Next slide, please. Um, Dr. Lewis mentioned about the fat intake. The goal is the dietary goal, less than 200 milligrams. Saturated fat less than 7% of total calories. Where do these fats lie? They lie in fatty meats or meats, period. Okay. Poultry, the skin of the poultry, hydrogenated shortenings. You may not purchase a hydrogenated shortening, but you may love donuts. That's for sure where it's hiding. Again, some of the oils, coconut palm, uh, you know, be mindful that whole milk products, butter, a lot of baked items, have those fats in it that we're talking about. Minimize the intake of trans fatty acids that are found in baked items. Use more monounsaturated fats, like we spoke about, olive oil, also walnut oil, avocado oil. Try to get salmon into your diet, herring, sardines, some type of fish that has omega fatty acids. That's going to help as well. Next slide, please. So we wanted you to know why it's important to lean more on a healthy diet as opposed to a regular budget. We want to shift the healthy budget to be the regular budget. You want to. I've taken time to really look at, what's going on the scope of food costs and everything. And I realize sometimes you may have to fast a meal. I've decided some breakfasts I do hibiscus tea and do an earlier lunch at 11. So if you really can't make the 3 meals a day, it's okay. But we definitely want you, when you get paid, when you look at, enjoying your fruits of your labor, when you go to the grocery store, be very strategic. Be very strategic. Spend a little bit more time in the fruit and vegetable section of what you would eat more frequently. Not nothing that's going to sit in the fridge and and spoil. We don't want that. Again, identify carbohydrate sources. Implement a low carbohydrate meal plan if you need it to get your glucose in tighter control. Increase and learn and identify high fiber dietary foods. uh, Identify sodium levels related to cardiovascular disease, knowing how to use the plate model for portion control. And if the regular plate's too big, get a pediatric plate. Get a smaller plate. Identifying low sodium food items and appropriate portion serving size.